Every year, the government tells us to save money on our heating bills by wearing an extra jumper and turning the thermostat down. But I don't want to sit in the cold. And anyway, I think there's a better way of doing it, which is to make your radiators smart and then only heat the rooms you have to. I've done it with the Eve Thermo radiator valves here, and I'm going to show you how I've done it and review these things at the same time. Last night, we were hit by something that's come to be known in England as a blizzard. It caused utter chaos. Luckily, we had some warning that the road conditions would be what the British news media likes to call treacherous. So local schools had time to close, postal deliveries stopped, and I gather people were being turned away from the local medical centre because the staff had been unable to battle their way through the drifting snow into work. Seriously, I'm not making this up. This is the actual snow that caused all the disruption. I wonder if anyone else sees the irony in a few snowflakes being unable to get into work because of a few snowflakes. Anyway, with these Arctic weather conditions, now seems like a good moment to think about how to use tech to lower your central heating costs. Now, there are only a limited number of ways you can lower your heating bills. You can go and buy a new house that was probably built sometime in the last half an hour to the highest thermal standards. You'll be able to heat it with a single candle, or a heat pump, or solar paneling. Or you could move to Iceland and pipe your radiators into the nearest hot spring. Or you can stay at home, dress up like an Eskimo, and turn the heating down, which isn't an awful lot of fun. Alternatively, you can reduce your heating bills by switching off the radiators in the rooms you don't use. The problem is, who can be bothered to walk around the house switching all the radiator valves off and on? Well, now there's no need, because now you can use smart radiator valves to switch off your unused radiators. Now, obviously, this technique is going to be of limited use if you live in a studio flat, but for anyone else, the bigger your house and the more unused rooms you have, the more you're going to save. We've got 14 rooms and 20 radiators in our house. I guess that sounds like quite a lot, but it's not really. One of the bedrooms is so small you'd have to sleep standing up. And well, 4 bedrooms, kitchen, sitting room, cinema, harpsichord room, pastry-making salon, they soon add up. And the thing is, these smart radiator valves are still quite expensive. You're looking at somewhere around £50 to £60 or dollars per radiator. So the trick is to use them only on the radiators that you're going to switch off a lot of the time. In our house, for example, there's just no point switching off the heating in the kitchen or here in my study because we're in and out of them all day long. But the bedrooms, well, heating them all day is just wasted money and unnecessary emissions, over and above the ones I let off overnight. Then you have to decide which radiator valves to buy. In the UK, you can get these Eve Thermos, but there are others made by Netatmo or Netatmo, Hive, Tado. I wonder if that's Tado or Tado, as in these radiator valves are much to do about nothing. Either way, there are also models from TP-Link, Sonoff and Aqara, amongst others. But you can narrow down that list very quickly. Some of them need their own hub, which is basically a small box of electronics you need to plug in somewhere in order for them to work. Now, ignoring the fact that I don't want a special box to control my bloody radiator valves, we also have another problem. Thick walls, which means that the radio signal from the hub would likely never reach the radiators at the far ends of the house. Also, I think if you're going to spend all this money, you're best off buying valves that are Matter compatible. Now, if you don't know what that means, it's a connection standard which makes smart home controllers and devices talk to each other nicely. In simple terms, Matter-enabled devices can be controlled by Apple HomeKit or Alexa or Google Assistant, or all 3 of them if you want, and all without a hub or a relay in sight. That narrows your choice down to the Eve Thermo valves and the Tados, or Tados, potatoes, whatever they are. They're both made by German companies, so they'll be engineered to last you all the way through the next ice age. I went with the Eve Thermos because they were the first valves I could find which didn't need a hub, and they've since enabled Matter. I've got a new one here, so I'll show you how easy it is to install. In the box, you get the thermostat itself, you get 2 batteries, you get a nut, and some adapters for Danfoss radiators. But before you install it, first you have to install the app. Now, the great thing is that once you've got these things installed, you won't actually need the app anymore. There's nothing worse than having a million different apps for every single different appliance around the house. So first of all, we'll just pop the batteries in. Now I need to connect it to the app. So let's see how quickly I can do that. First of all, press Settings, then Plus. There we go. Add accessory. It's asking me to scan the QR code on the back. So we'll do that. Add to Home. Setting up. Now, I'm not going to inflict the rest of the setup process on you in real time. It's very simple and intuitive, but it does take about 10 minutes to create a room in the app, name your thermostat, update the firmware, and then finally to upgrade the thermostat to Matter. But I've now done all that, so now I can go and attach it to the radiator. Now, installing your new smart thermostat really couldn't be any easier. You shouldn't need to call out a plumber for this job. All you need to do is unscrew the old thermostat. There's a knurled ring on the base which you use to loosen it off, and that should come away quite easily. If it doesn't, you may need a wrench just to loosen it off. Now, before you put your new thermostat on, it is worth checking that your valve's working properly. There's a little pin in the middle of it, and you use your wrench or something else solid to press down on that pin, maybe half a dozen times, just to check that it's moving freely and that it springs back into place. If it doesn't, well, it's knackered, and that is going to need a plumber to come and replace it because it's really for the advanced DIYer. You'll have to drain down the central heating. But assuming that all is well, then all you need to do is then screw the thermo into place until it is tight without being overly so. So now I'm all ready to go, and I can switch my radiators on and off using Apple Home on my telephone or on one of the HomePods we have littered around the house. Siri, turn our bedroom radiators on. There we go. Or how about this? Siri, turn the heating in our bedroom up to 21 degrees. Done it again. But the thing is, unless you're spectacularly short of friends, you probably won't want to have to talk to your radiators 4 times a day. So the next thing you'll need to do is add an automation. In our house, I've set up automations for the radiators in the bedrooms to come on in the morning for a couple of hours, then switch off, and then come back on again for a few hours in the evening. But then I can go a step further because the guest bedrooms are very rarely used. And of course, I sold my children into slavery a couple of years ago, so I can leave their rooms completely unheated by switching off the automations. Annoyingly, Siri won't yet turn automations on and off, so I can only activate them with my iPhone. But I can live with that. And there we have it. The setup really is that easy. There are other automations you can add, like switching off radiators when the last person leaves the house, but then you'd need them to come back on again when you're 20 minutes from getting home, and there just isn't a way of doing that. Now, you can also control your radiators with the supplied Eve app, but if you've set them up with Apple Home or Google Assistant or Alexa, I can't really see the point. The only added extra that the Eve app brings to the radiator party are graphs of when your valves were open and closed and how the temperature has varied over the course of the day. But I think you'd have to be a world-class crashing ball to want to spend time poring over graphs of your guest bedroom radiator performance. Although I can't wait to share that data with our dinner party guests tomorrow night. Time to dust down the overhead projector, I think. That aside, the question now is how much money I'll save and what the payback time is for these things. Now on that front, BEMA, and I'm talking of course about the British Electrotechnical and Allied Manufacturers Association, not the car, did do some research in 2018 which showed that using thermostatic radiator valves would likely give savings on your heating bill of 18% by reducing the load on your boiler. Thing is, their study will have assumed you set a thermostat to switch off the radiator at a target temperature. And nobody does that. You just turn them up to full when you're cold and then turn them down a bit if you're too hot, which in this house is never. But what I'm doing here is slightly different. I'm switching the unused radiators off completely. So what might that save me? Well, I had a look at my oil bills over the last 4 years, and it looks like I've spent an average of £2,793 a year on heating. Of that, I estimate that my central heating is costing at least £800 a year. Now, I don't think that switching off 36% of my radiators is going to save me 36% of my heating bill, because it still has to heat up the pipework, and sometimes I switch them back on. So let's call it 20%. That's in line with manufacturer estimates. Now, 20% of my heating equals a saving of £160 a year. It costs £434 to buy 7 of these thermos, so all things being equal, they'll pay for themselves in less than 3 years. By comparison, from the various sources I can find online, solar panels pay back after about 6 to 12 years and air source heat pumps in 7 to 15. But that does depend on a lot of factors, such as the outside air temperatures, how much time we spend at home, and how many more countries Putin decides to invade. Either way, £160 a year saving. Doesn't sound like very much, does it? You won't even buy dinner for one at restaurant Gordon Ramsay. But once these things have been paid for, that's nearly £1,000 over 6 years, more with compound interest, and that is worth having. On top of the savings, I can also feel virtuous about not contributing more greenhouse gases than I need to. And the great thing is, I can save money and feel virtuous without suffering any discomfort. I mean, occasionally I go into a spare room to get something out of a cupboard and think, bugger, it's cold in here. But other than that, I can't say I've noticed. If anything, I think our heating has actually become a bit more effective since we installed these things. The system seems to heat up faster and hotter. I said at the start that I'd review these things, which is actually a bit harder than I thought it would be. I mean, there's only so much you can say about a white lump of plastic which opens and closes radiator valves. The setup was very straightforward, and I can confirm that the Eve Thermos do indeed open and close radiator valves very reliably. They're also reasonably innocuous, although they do make a little bit of a whirring noise when they're opening or closing, which you'll notice if you have them in your bedroom and you're awake. Are they good value? Well, they're not the cheapest radiator valves on the market, but they are compatible with just about anything, including matter. I think that makes them probably the best ones on the market and worth the extra you'll spend on them. Are they a good investment? Well, I won't know for a while yet, but I think my calculations have been reasonably conservative, and they should pay for themselves inside 3 years. So there we have it. If you're interested in other smart home technology, you might like to watch my review of the Tempest weather station, which, aside from being one of the most compact all-singing, all-dancing weather stations, can also control smart devices around your house. Otherwise, till the next time, I've been Arlo Guthrie. Bye-bye.